It's a numbers game, live from Las Vegas, Nevada, only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Now, live from the VSiN studios, it's your host, Gill Alexander.
We're like pigs in slop. It's football season. Happy football, everybody. This is outstanding. Week 1, of course, begins tonight with the Chiefs and Patriots, and you can get a jump on Week 1 in the NFL still with Point Spread Weekly. It is our new digital magazine from the Vegas Stats and Information Network, just in time for football season. College and pro both, by the way. Here's what you can expect every week, and there it is on the screen at vsin.com. Brent Musburger on this week's cover of the digital magazine. 40 pages of key stats and betting trends for college and NFL matchups. Exclusive analysis, including not 1, not 2, but 3 sets of power ratings. The best college and NFL plays of the week from VSiN's on-air experts. All of that. Point Spread Weekly is what it's called, and you can sign up now for your free trial at vsin.com/subscribe. Gill Alexander with our round table here. We got to come up with a better word than round table, Jorge. Gangbang was vetoed. Our executive producer.
Again.
What I love about our executive producer, Rick Jaffe, is that he didn't veto it. He said, it's just not your brand, Gill. I love that. So it's open for another show to perhaps use. Rick is not amused in the corner, by the way. This is a great attack of every week. We're going to do this Thursday. Great attack of the NFL lines. We're going to do it on the phone. Warren Sharp from Sharp Football Analysis and sharpfootballstats.com. The best advanced analysis you can find in studio with Bill Krackomberger, a professional bettor, and joined now, as we will every week as well for a couple segments, by the senior football editor over at Rotoworld, Evan Silva. Evan, hello. Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Let's get into the X's and O's of some of these games. What is the 1 or 2 that really intrigue you from that perspective this week?
The Philadelphia-Washington game is pretty intriguing from an X's and O's standpoint. I think that Carson Wentz has a chance to take a pretty big leap in his second NFL season. He was a guy who started really hot last year and kind of flamed out. And if you looked at the surrounding talent around Carson Wentz last year, it was pathetic. I mean, they had the worst receiver core in football. They lost Lane Johnson for 10 games to a suspension. If you look at Carson Wentz split stats when Lane Johnson was on the field and when he wasn't on the field, Carson Wentz was a much better quarterback when Lane Johnson was in there. And one thing I also noticed when breaking down this game on the other side was how much success the Redskins running game had in 2 meetings with the Eagles last season. The first game was Matt Jones, who's now with the Colts. The Redskins actually cut him. He had a monster game against the Eagles. And then the Redskins came back in the second game, and they ran it all over the Eagles again. And the Eagles run what's called a wide 9 style of defense. So they will spread out their defensive linemen in order to create larger pass rush lanes. But sometimes that can leave them vulnerable against the run. And we saw the Redskins running game smash them twice. The Redskins return all 5 offensive line starters from a very good offensive line. And so I think that this is a game where each offense should be able to have success moving the ball against their opponent. Overall, last year, the Redskins running backs combined for 49 carries against the Eagles. They ran for 332 yards, averaged 6.8 yards per carry, so almost 7 yards per carry. And the Redskins running backs combined for 3 rushing touchdowns. So I like both of these offenses facing up from a matchup standpoint against the opposing defense.
Rob Kelly, affectionately called Fat Rob, will be the Redskins starter in this game. We'll see how long it will take for Samaje Perine to crack the Redskins starting lineup. To your point, Evan, about the Eagles last year, 7-9 in the standings, but 1-6 in one-score games. They had the toughest schedule by some metrics in football. And now Carson Wentz, 1 year older, Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith in the mix, and your Lane Johnson point, out 10 games last year. The Eagles 5-1 straight up with Lane Johnson in the lineup last year, 2-8. Warren, that's a point that you made in your preview guide. How do you see this game?
Yeah, I think one of the big edges is going to be the tight end passing game of the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they're going to use that to kind of split the soft underbelly of this Redskins defense wide open. I mean, we know that Josh Norman on the edge, and is Carson Wentz going to even completely avoid throwing the ball too much at him? And they have a major matchup edge right up the gut. I think that edge in terms of what the Redskins gave up. They gave up a 58% success rate and a 74% completion rate to tight ends last year on a first and second down, which you know, Gil, how much I value first and second downs in the NFL. Third downs talked about more often, but those are the really key downs. They gave up a 63% success rate and a 102 passer rating to the tight end position, fourth worst in the NFL. And apart from Greg Olsen, they didn't really face very many good tight ends last season at all to begin with. So I think that's going to be a major problem. And then another element to this game that I'm really intrigued and really hope Philadelphia employs a little bit more is the no huddle. They used a little bit of hurry up offense, Philadelphia did, in the preseason. And when Wentz huddled against the Redskins last year, he hit 6.8 yards per attempt and a 79 rating. When he operated from no huddle, obviously less often, 9.7 yards per attempt and a 107 rating against the Redskins. I would like to see them operate a little bit more hurry up. I think Evan's point and your point about Lane Johnson being present, they were without Lane Johnson, I believe, both of the games last year when they faced the Redskins. So I do think that there are some edges there for the Philadelphia Eagles offensively. But as Evan pointed out, you know, the Redskins do seem to have the number of the Eagles in terms of their running attack. They're much more successful running to the left behind Trent Williams, and they're breaking out big explosive runs of 10-plus more yards around the left side as well as behind the left tackle. 7 of their total, I think it was 10 explosive rushes that came against the Eagles last year were to the outside left or behind the left tackle. So I think that's where they're going to attack with the run game, but they've had a lot of success there. And if they can run the ball on this formidable defense, if they have success doing that, it will open up some things in the passing game. And that's kind of the weakness of the Eagles, at least the question marks. They tried to improve that this offseason during the preseason, in fact, by bringing in some new players to start for them in the secondary. But we'll have to see how that functions really, you know, in week 1.
Again, Washington opened as a 3-point favorite in that Sunday morning game at home against the Eagles, but now it has moved all the way so that the Eagles now are favorites by a point on the road. That money, you're on that as well, Bill?
Yes, sir.
You're all about that.
Plus, yeah, I took a little bit with the nothing crazy. Nothing crazy. NFL sides are nothing crazy for me. I don't go crazy on NFL sides. I stick with Warren's totals.
Yeah.
And more of a totals player for sure.
I think you guys know, I grew up in D.C. I'm a Redskin fan by birth, and I do not have a bullish feeling about this team. Warren's point about Deshaun Jackson making more of an impact in going away from a team than necessarily getting to a team, more of an impact negatively to the Redskins, that is, than positively perhaps on the Bucs, though of course an Evans-Jackson tandem at wide receiver looks good for the Bucs. But there's a bit of chicken and egg in Washington, isn't there, Warren, where you just don't know in the end. Did Deshaun Jackson make Kirk Cousins opening up, you know, for Jordan Reed in the middle of the field, or is Kirk Cousins responsible for much of his success? Time will tell, and I'm not so sure yet what we're going to see with them.
Yeah, I think the problem with the Redskins is, you know, I think you can replace Pierre Garçon. You obviously have to. Terrell Pryor's got the deep speed. You know, he's much more. He has speed that people don't seem to realize. But the issue becomes if Josh Doctson cannot step up into a solid role there. I like Crowder. He's going to get a ton of passes out of the slot. But they need somebody opposite of Terrell Pryor to really have an impact. And if Josh Doctson, we really haven't seen him enough in the NFL, he's failed to be healthy. I don't really know what type of impact they're going to get out of him. And if you use Crowder from the slot and then Pryor as like kind of your Pierre Garçon role, your top guy, you don't really have that guy who's running those just deep routes just to take the top off the defense and open up everything underneath for other guys to eat. Every time Deshaun Jackson steps out on the field, the defense has to adjust their personnel. And while I still think that they're going to need to adjust to respect Terrell Pryor, if they don't have a couple other guys capable of eating underneath, that's going to be a problem. Fortunately, Reed is healthy right now, so that's going to be an edge for them until he goes down, which it seems unfortunate that he gets hurt every single season.
So brittle. He's made of glass, for God's sakes, Warren. I love Jamison Crowder. Jay Gruden intent on throwing fades to Josh Doctson in the end zone. We'll see if that happens this year. Jay Gruden almost comically intent on feeding Josh Doctson when he was in the lineup last year. On the phone with Warren Sharp, from Sharp Football Analysis and SharpFootballStats.com. Bill Krackomberger in studio. Evan Silva from Rotoworld on the phone as well. Evan, X's and O's, let's go to another game. What else intrigues you this weekend, sir?
In the Arizona-Detroit game, I think that there are some edges to be had, particularly on the Cardinals side. And I've noticed that the line has moved a lot on this game. I mean, the Lions opened as, I believe, 2.5-point favorites, and now they are dogs at home by, I think, 1 or 1.5, depending on where you look. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty significant. So the Lions linebacker core is maybe the worst in the NFC. I would probably go with Oakland as the worst in the AFC. But the Lions will be trotting out a rookie middle linebacker, Jared Davis. Their strong side linebacker, Paul Warlow, was a guy who started in 2014 and 2015 for the Falcons, and he was just a train wreck. And then they benched him last year and, of course, went to the Super Bowl, let him walk in free agency, and now he is starting in Detroit. And their weak side linebacker, Tahir Whitehead, according to Pro Football Focus, allowed the most passing yards into his coverage in the NFL among linebackers last year, and also got burned for 7 touchdown passes. So I think that the Cardinals are going to proactively try to get David Johnson matched up with these guys, and he's just going to run all over them. And I also think that Larry Fitzgerald has a chance at a big game in the slot. Larry Fitzgerald has been a guy who has kind of tailed off toward the end of seasons in recent years, understandably, considering his age. But at the same time, he has started seasons super, super hot. And just from a pure fantasy standpoint, the Lions allowed the most fantasy points to opposing slot receivers in the NFL last year. And the Lions have no pass rush. And this is really going to benefit Carson Palmer, who has big splits when he is under pressure and when he is not under pressure. The Lions ranked dead last in the NFC in sacks last season. And then during the preseason, they lost their leading sack artist from last year, Kerry Hyder, to a torn Achilles. And then their other defensive end, Ziggy Ansah, he struggled with an ankle injury all last year. He only had 2 sacks in 13 games, and then he missed all of training camp with an ankle injury. And they're saying that he's probably going to be on a snap count. So there are a lot of different ways that the Cardinals can beat up on this defense.
Evan Silva from Rotoworld, senior football editor. You got me wanting to sprint out and bet the Cardinals after that. And Evan points out, Bill, I should have mentioned this in the first segment because I talked about 3 games where the line has moved on the side, the Jets and the Bills, obviously the Eagles and the Redskins and the Titans and the Raiders. But he points out also a flip of favorite here in this Cardinals-Lions game.
Yeah, actually 4.5 points. Some of the sharper sports books have 2 on this, so that's a really big move. I'm not part of that one.
Not part of that one.
No, but that is a big move and interesting. I love hearing those extra information like that.
Yeah.
From Evan.
That is some stuff you won't get anywhere else.
Absolutely.
That is great. Detroit opened as a 2.5-point favorite, and now, as Bill points out, 2-point consensus favorites are the Cardinals on the road on a Sunday morning. Warren, anything to add to that matchup?
I think Evan really nailed it. I basically concur 100%. I mean, what do we know is vital to the NFL? What is vital to the NFL is being able to pass the ball efficiently. Efficiency in passing is 4 times more correlated to wins than rushing the ball. And so that doesn't play into Arizona's ability to run the ball in this game. But what the problems are is if you take a pass rush and you have a weak pass rush to begin with, you get rid of, like Evan said, the top 2 rushers from that unit. You don't really add anybody convincingly. I think that's going to be a big detriment to the Lions in this game defensively, which were already a bad defense to begin with. And then you factor in David Johnson out of the backfield. I think that's a major element. I know, Crack, last year we went a couple of times on props where we went over receptions on David Johnson. He, in my mind, could potentially be the leading receiver in terms of total yardage for the Arizona Cardinals. It's a long shot, but it actually could happen given the health of their receiving core and the age of Larry Fitzgerald. I think we shouldn't underestimate David Johnson's pass-catching ability, as Evan mentioned, in this game against Detroit.
David Johnson led me to a fantasy title last year. I almost wept when Evan mentioned David Johnson because I don't have him this year. But, yes, I concur on all of the above. More with Warren Sharp, Bill Krackomberger, Evan Silva. More matchups. Week 1 of the NFL right here exclusively at VSiN on A Numbers Game.
This is A Numbers Game with Gill Alexander on Sirius XM 204.